What is up? Welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. And looking at these classes like we have over the last 2 weeks, there has been some debate over how good and how bad the running backs and quarterbacks are. But I think everyone universally agrees this wide receiver class is fantastic. Everybody loves it. It is a great class. It is a deep class, but you don't want to hear about it from Josh Hudson or myself, which is why we have the great John Laub on to break these guys down and tell us who he likes and if there's anybody he doesn't like. Let's get into it. What is up? Welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. Hosting again, Ryan Weisse, because Joe Zolo just needed another damn day off. But
look, he's getting married in 2 days, Ryan.
How dare he?
Been there, done that. No, in all seriousness, and I can't even make it to the wedding because of family stuff going on. So my best to Joe, my best to Maggie. Hope you guys are having a great time planning what is probably the most hectic day of your life to this point. As you've already heard, with me, as always, though it was somewhat in question until about a half an hour ago, Joshua Hudson. How are you doing today, Josh?
Man, I'm just happy to be off of work with a drink in my hand and talking football. That is what I'm happy about. And I'll tell you what, this has been one of those days where when I saw our intro video, if that doesn't set up our guests more than ever, I don't know when it has, because hype as fuck for John Laub from PlayerProfiler today. What's up, John?
Hey, man, it is draft season. We're like less than 15 days away. Am I correct on that? So, what I'm glad about is all the grinding is done. My written profiles, my scouting reports, the resumes, the rankings. I mean, I guess I could tweak. And obviously, after the draft, we will have updated rankings depending on landing spot. But as all of the pre-work is done, I basically started in mid-December, kicked into high gear around the Senior Bowl. So it's been about 4 consecutive months of working on these prospects. And now I really feel like I'm part of the group. I'm part of the pack, but I'm not part of the pack, right? I'm on the outside looking in.
Now, the work you put in on these college prospects, and John, I don't mind saying, you got started on Twitter, I feel like right around the same time I did. And I have been following your work on these college guys. You're one of the first people I noticed who really dove into the college prospects. And for someone like me who doesn't watch the college game, your work is life-saving because I learned so much from it. Before we get into your rankings and start talking to you about these wide receivers, I like to start off the show by letting people know where they can find your work, because you have a few different outlets. And I want to make sure people understand where they can find the Gridiron Scholar, just talking about everything college football and even the pro game.
Well, thank you, Ryan, very much. And I started 2014 doing my scouting reports and grading the players and ranking them. So this is my 11th year doing it. I've been on Twitter. I think that was the first year I started on Twitter.
I feel like that's about the right time.
Yeah, I joined Twitter specifically to promote, try to get a larger audience, learn what the social media is. But right now, I'm on PlayerProfiler. And I mentioned all my scouting reports and my prospect profiles are all there. They're by position. So there's an article on quarterbacks, article on running backs. We're going to delve into the wide receivers tonight. And then there's an article on tight ends. And then I just came out earlier this week, sleepers, my top 6 sleepers. And how I define that is players after the top 36 dynasty picks are off the board in drafts. Okay. I'm not going to give you a guy who's a second-round pick. This industry is so knowledgeable right now. There is so much content out there. In order to win a dynasty league, you need to pick up players who can contribute in the flex or as a depth piece in the 4th or 5th round. And I've used this example before. You might have taken Quentin Johnson in the 1st round last year. However, if you were astute and picked up Tank Dell or Puka Nacua in the 4th or 5th round, it really doesn't matter that you might have flopped on Quentin Johnson. So it is really important. The longer I play Dynasty, this is my 8th year now. You cannot just kind of say, I just want a high-end upside player. Now, no one expected Puka, but I did expect him to be a productive NFL player. If you get the ceiling, gold. You can't throw away those picks. We've all been there where you got 3 flex positions, you got 4 guys on bye, you have an injury, and you're just looking for a body to put in, right? Give me 10 PPR points. Yeah. Those are your 4th and 5th round picks. Or you're in a super flex and you're desperate for a quarterback. You need that 3rd quarterback. And my teammate on the rookie big board, I'll mention that in a minute. My teammate always says, to win a super flex league, you need 3 out of the top 24 fantasy scorers. You need to have for the bye weeks, and in case of injury, you need that 3rd guy who can go up and put a 22 points up on the board. And if you want to see my video content for the 5th year with Matt Hicks, we're on YouTube at the Rookie Big Board channel. We have 28 previewed players up there right now. And if you join our team, we have 7 additional bonus videos when you join our Patreon.
And we've been able to include a lot of those videos in the threads we're putting out. So lovely to be able to share your and we appreciate you putting it out there, because otherwise Club Fantasy don't have a lot to say about these rookies. So we very much appreciate it. So make sure you're following those guys on YouTube, Rookie Big Board. And while you're there, it'd be lovely if you could go ahead and subscribe to Club Fantasy as well. We finally just passed 800 followers. We'd love to hit 1,000 before the season starts. And that starts with you just clicking that subscribe button, notifications if you want. Turn them off if you don't want. We're still going to put the content out. We go live about 5 times a week. We'd love to have you guys with us for the ride. John, let's talk about your top 10. Normally, I don't want to say a lot of people's top 10s have been chalky, but right away, there's something different about your top 10 than everybody else's top 10. So at number 1, you have Malik Nabers. Number 2, Marvin Harrison Jr. Number 3, Rome Odunze. Number 4, Brian Thomas. Number 5, Troy Franklin. Number 6, Xavier Worthy. 7 is Javon Baker. 8, Keon Coleman. 9, Ladd McConkey. And 10, Roman Wilson. So when we look at that top 1, it's a little different. So I guess you have Malik Nabers at 1. How close is the gap between Nabers and Marvin Harrison? I think it's easy for a lot of folks to just put Harrison at top, and some even want to put him in his own tier. Obviously, you have Nabers ahead. What puts Nabers in that upper echelon of prospects?
They're very close. If I was going to give him a grade, let's say I gave Nabers a 95, Harrison would have a 94. That's how close it is. And if it was a year ago and we were doing a Debbie show, it would have been Harrison. I'm not going to sit there and tell folks that I didn't have Harrison at the top. But as I watched a lot of LSU football, I began to have some thoughts by mid-October that seemed strange at the time. And that was, is Malik Nabers better than Marvin Harrison? I'm like, that's kind of silly. But man, I can't tell you how much I loved watching him live. And then when I would break down the film, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, I'd be like, oh, that is just nasty stuff, right? But it's still just the eyeball. And it was maybe 6 games at that point. I was also watching a lot of Jaden Daniels at the time. So LSU was just loaded. It was a great team to watch. And then by about mid-November, I'm like, you know what? I think Nabers is better than Harrison. And I said, am I nuts? And then I plugged the numbers in. When both the regular season ended, and I was pretty sure neither of them would play in a bowl game. I was like, they're not going to go to a bowl game. These are first-round picks. I said, let me plug the numbers into my model. And gentlemen, Malik Nabers beats Marvin Harrison in almost more than half my statistical categories. And I said, wow, my film grade and scouting report matches my model? Oh, I got something here. So then I went back around winter vacation when we, we're off between, the holiday season and New Year. And I said, that's it. I'm going to put Malik Nabers number 1. I went on Sirius XM, Football Diehards, and I went on one of their morning shows, Fantistics. And I was given my top 5 prospects in January. And I said Malik Nabers was number 1. And I didn't think it was a hot take. I really don't, because I said, watch the film. It's not crazy. It was crazy in October. It was realistic in November. And by January, I was like, I believe he's better. I believe he's more versatile. And I understand Marvin Harrison is your classic X receiver. He's AJ Green, Julio Jones, Larry Fitzgerald. That's the bucket. He's on the boundary. You can put him on the short side of the formation on the far hash mark, and he'll beat your defender. Yet, if I want a chess piece, I want to line a guy up inside. I want to put him in motion. I want to put him on the X. I want to play him at the Z. Heck, I can put him in the backfield if I want. If I want the guy to run crossers, I want him to attack the seam. I want to run him outside the boundary. That's Malik, man. I mean, literally, I think you can pull Malik Nabers anywhere on the field. And I just said, this is he's Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, and Justin Jefferson. That's what he is. Excuse me, gentlemen. So if you're saying to me, we're talking elite prospects, elite players here. I hope that Malik goes to a team with a good offense coordinator who understands what he's good at. You put this guy in motion and you isolate him. Gentlemen, it's over. It's over. I mean, you put him one-on-one 15 yards down the field and you have the safety cheating to the other side or something. Malik's gone. And in the open field, gentlemen, he is so hard to tackle one-on-one. You have to gang tackle him. Now, there's great safeties. The NFL safeties are better than the SEC safeties. But, man, when you're shaking SEC secondaries and safeties on a regular basis, that is saying something. It's razor thin, but I think Malik is more diverse. Now, my fear is that you'll get him on an offensive coordinator who says, let's just play him at the X. Wrong, gentlemen. Yeah. But I believe, there are more offensive coordinators and coaches who are getting better at using wide receivers. Yeah, I mean, Bill Belichick and Patriots are not one of those. That's debatable. Right? But there are teams that use more motion, use players in a wide variety. Ironically, remember Marvin Harrison, his senior, would literally only line up on the right side of the field. And Reggie, that generation is basically gone, right? So now you can move Harrison around, but I think you put him on the X. I think that's what 80% of the snaps out there. So it came down to versatility. And what yak yardage I saw. Malik Nabers' yak yardage is better in my book. Not saying that Harrison's bad, but I think Malik outgraded him in my book.
So I think that's really interesting that you say this, because I feel like we've had some people say that, people that want to put Nabers ahead of Marvin Harrison is sort of this prospect fatigue because everybody's had, Marvin Harrison so high. But then I hear guys like Daniel Jeremiah on NFL Network who talk about that there are plenty of teams that will have Malik Nabers ahead of Marvin Harrison. And part of it, I think, is kind of going to what you're saying, is that he is this kind of twitchy athlete that you can move around because he's so fast and so versatile. But here's what I do want to ask in this debate between Marvin Harrison and Malik Nabers. Now, obviously, we're ranking and we're talking on this show in terms of, talent, right? It's not about landing spot. It's not about any of that. I want to put a hypothetical scenario out here for you because I want to see if this changes your opinion any. If, let's say, Marvin Harrison lands in Arizona with the Cardinals, and let's say Malik Nabers goes to the Giants, does Nabers still stay at 1 for you, or does it flip? Because let's be honest here. The Giants have no quarterback. Daniel Jones sucks. And that offense has no offensive line at all. Arizona's done the due diligence to really start to build ahead. That Kyler really started to come back from that injury last year. I think anybody with a sane mind might say that the Arizona situation is just better for a rookie wide receiver right now than the Giants.
I'm not going to flip on that scenario. Whoever lands up in New England I thought you were going to send me to New England, okay? And that would be a totally different story. Yet, because the quarterback position changes so frequently in the NFL, Josh, if it was 10 years ago, I would probably agree with you.
Okay.
There's a good chance that Daniel Jones is not the quarterback in 2025.
Oh, 100%.
So that means we get a new quarterback.
Could be getting a new head coach and a coordinator, too.
Yes. But what would you immediately do if you're the new head coach and coordinator? You build your offense around Malik Nabers.
Oh, 100%.
And if they bring, and whoever the quarterback is, you're going to use Malik Nabers. So because the NFL moves at such a rapid pace, 3 years ago is eternity. Think about your fantasy draft in 2021 and then think about it now. Yep. It seems like forever.
Can I
not? So I'm still going to put Malik in that scenario because I do believe that either the Giants get it, Dable and Jones figure it out, or they're gone and we get a reboot and I'll figure out what the reboot is.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. All right. So having Nabers at 1, obviously Harrison at 2. Does that mean that Harrison isn't such a transcendent prospect that so many people think, or are they both kind of in that, like, quote unquote, once in a generation tier?
I think they're both in a once in a generation tier. So I don't think we have, I know it might, so the one thing, as I'm becoming a curmudgeon, I don't like that term anymore. That's just kind of like, I don't use generational anymore because I think it tends to be overused.
We talked about that a few weeks ago on our quarterback show, that we are just saying, do we need to understand how long a generation is? We're saying it way too often at this point.
Too often.
Look, in the NFL, a generation is like 16 weeks.
3 years.
Yeah, apparently.
We literally just said it changes fast, people.
Yes. So I'm more into buckets. That's how I like to use the term. Like when I'm grading and looking at players, I like to think of it as a bucket. As far as an elite NFL alpha male bucket, both of them are clearly in that bucket. CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, right? These just now, they all have different styles, so the bucket doesn't have to be the same. Then you could have sections in the bucket, you know, like those popcorn things you get where they have cheese popcorn, caramel popcorn, and like regular butter popcorn. Well,
so you like to mix and match, right? You're putting everything in all. Okay, all right.
In my alpha male bucket, hey, alpha male bucket, you can have the classic X receiver. That's that Larry Fitzgerald, AJ Green, Julio Jones, AJ Brown. But you can have the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson bucket. You can also have, might be a little thinner, but you can have the target hog bucket like Jarvis Landry, right? Just that magnet who gets so many, just depends on the number of touchdowns. Yeah. So they're both in the alpha male. Yeah, right? They're both in the alpha male, alpha target bucket. They're different flavors, which kind of means on an organization, they're going to have the flavor that they prefer. Do you want mint chocolate chip or Oreo cookie with your alpha male wide receiver? Some teams are going to go Oreo cookie. Some are going to be mint. I like mint. I want Malik Nabers. You know, I want Justin Jefferson. I want Jamar Chase. But there are plenty of teams that will go, give me Larry Fitzgerald. Give me AJ Brown. Nothing there. It's just, how do you construct your room? How do you want your offense to function? And what do you think has the biggest long-term impact? I like the versatile player. I mean, how many times have we seen Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson all over the field? And you find those mismatches and you put them in motion. There's just so many awesome things with that type of player that I prefer. But I understand you want, if you're seeking that X receiver, that just dominant Julio Jones, right? 175 targets. And you want him out on that boundary, I get it. I understand why you like that player. I just prefer the chess piece in the modern game.
So this is not on the show sheet. I'm jumping ahead. I don't even know ahead a little here. All your comps for Nabers are the new hotness. And I'm not going to call the guys we're comping Marvin Harrison to old and busted, because they're not. They are now, because it was 5-10 years ago. As we mentioned, that's a lifetime in the NFL. This is going to sound like a ridiculous question, but does their game, Julio Jones's game, AJ Green's game, Marvin Harrison's game, does it translate to the modern day NFL? Should there be concerns about Marvin Harrison?
I don't think there should be concerns, but
Okay.
I think the game has evolved. And the game has evolved enough where I wonder how many organizations are still looking for that boundary X dominant alpha male. Now, part of it is maybe over the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't really had it. So that is kind of a factor in this, right? And the college game is moving away from your classic X. Like, if you even look at college players right now, there's not a lot of these Marvin Harrison 6'4" players out there. So what is happening to me at the high school level and now in the college? They are taking the superior athlete who might be a little smaller, right?
Yeah.
They're taking the young man who they might not have played at receiver 20 years ago, right? Because he might be 5'10", 5'11", coming out of high school, right? 170. But then the kid grows 2 inches and he gains 15, 20 pounds in college, right? So he's still at that 6 foot, right? Like, I mean, Nabers is perfect, 6 foot 200, right? That's like the perfect size, right?
Yeah.
He was probably 5'10", and he was probably 180 coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And if you look at most of these uber neighbor type, Jordan Addison type, most of them have a track and field background more so than they did in the past. Doesn't mean the others didn't, but these young men are coming out as sprinters. They're the 4x100 relay. They're the 100 meter, the 200 meter. You know, maybe the old athletes used to do the triple jump and the long jump or the high jump. I think they're looking for speed and space at the lower levels. So these young men are getting more opportunities than they did. And the game is now evolving to a space game. Yeah. We want people in space with speed. Doesn't mean everyone, but it is evolving into that game more and more.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. It occurred to me when you were bringing it up. I'm like, we're really comping him to older guys who aren't today's NFL. You mentioned the 3 flavors of popcorn earlier. I think the third flavor in this draft is Odunze. He's the consensus wide receiver 3 or top 3 wide receiver, but there are some questions, breakout age and other analytics that maybe just don't support him being in the consensus. Can you talk about the things that Odunze does well that just has people salivating getting him on their favorite NFL team?
He has the best hands and ball tracking in this class. And wow. I can't believe his hands, man, his hands are so nasty. And I mean, I can't count the number of times that he bailed out Michael Penix, which is interesting. I like Penix, so don't get me wrong. But man, Penix would throw some balls where I say, that's chutzpah. But then I say, ooh, who's he throwing it to? Odunze. And if you're going to have chutzpah and you're going to have confidence, you know what? You could do a lot worse than throwing that ball to Odunze. I mean, how many times he bailed out, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I just say, hey, he threw a very hard pass over the shoulder, outside the hash marks, 30 yards down the field, folks. There's not a lot of players who are going to catch that ball. Odunze caught that ball. Odunze also is very good. I don't is it intuitive or did he practice? Like, I'm not with the practice, but his ability to get positioning when he's covered and reach over someone, around someone, like to get the 2 hands on the ball while someone is draped all over him or in front of him is unbelievable. I think he's a very underrated route runner. I think he can beat you at all levels of the field. I mean, he's a classic X. I mean, this is why it's so fascinating, Ryan. In one draft, in 1 year, we have he's 6'3", 212. Marvin Harrison, 6'3", 205. Yep. I mean, last year we couldn't find a receiver over 6 feet and 200 pounds.
That's why Ryan traded all his first-round picks in rookie drafts.
Yes. And now we literally have two, right, alpha male, alpha target receivers. Now, I'll say this. While I believe Rome will play on the outside the majority of the time, I do think he's a little bit more versatile than Harrison. I think you can move him around a little bit more. Now, depending on the organization that that drafts him and how they perceive the depth chart and the positional value. Like I keep saying, I had a dream the other night. The Bears got him at number 9. And that would make Caleb Williams in redraft a top 6 quarterback. It would make Caleb Williams a top 3 in Dynasty. If you're telling me in 4 receiver formations, and I'll fudge with Cole Kmet as an insider there, but you're telling me you have Keenan Allen, an immediate separator, veteran who can get open at any moment. Then you have Rome Odunze and DJ Moore on the outside. I mean, forget about it. Rome Odunze is an automatic mismatch from day one. Who are you going to cover? I mean, like literally, who are you going to cover? Rome Odunze. You put a 5'11" corner on Rome Odunze, you're dead. You're dead. But what are you going to do? Let DJ Moore beat you in single coverage deep all day long, or Keenan Allen just milk you underneath? Or, how many times does Cole Kmet sneak out deep 20 yards down the field? You're like, how did Cole Kmet get that open? Or why didn't they throw him last week? Why do they have no targets to Cole Kmet? The weirdest, I like him very much, but like the target share and how they use him is so different and so wildly variance.
Well,
but man, that's a nasty, nasty wide receiver core. And Rome Odunze would have beneficial matchups in that all the time.
The amount of times we had to say, how did Cole Kmet get that wide open? And how did Justin Fields miss him that badly?
Oh,
At least we don't have to worry about that anymore. It's a little bit of a different game at this point there. Yeah, that Bears landing spot would be salivation worthy. I think that's
I still don't see it. I can't imagine with the depth of this wide receiver class that they invest a top 10 pick in a wide receiver after making the move to get Keenan Allen.
Joshua,
they've got to go defense, in my opinion, at 9.
No, I go offensive line.
Yeah,
because if
protect the investment.
If all these players go off that we think, there's going to be an offensive lineman just sitting there, and you're like,
some big tackle that can protect your boy. Yeah, no, I get it.
I can't pronounce the Penn State offensive lineman, but he's a monster. Joe Altamont. There's 3 tackles. You're just like, let me protect him with Caleb. I mean, so yes, the smart move is in my book, offensive line.
Yeah, I get that. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit. We've been talking about these bigger wide receivers.
Yeah.
Let's talk the small guys here, right?
Okay.
Xavier Worthy, the blazing fast 40 time, and now everybody, of course, is going to talk about him. We remember back when John Ross was the blazing fastest 40 time and ended up as a top 10 pick in what people thought was a pretty decent wide receiver class, or at least top heavy wide receiver class. And I say this because Ryan's the biggest hater of small wide receivers. And
I want to defend myself.
5'11", so he's not as small as Zay Flowers, but the dude's a $165 soaking wet.
Yeah, that's
so. Is he more than just the fast 40, or can he be like a Tank Dell, where he can move around and has some wiggle and under maybe some of these short underneath routes that an offense can use in a lot of different ways? And I say this because the site you work for, Player Profiler, they comp Xavier Worthy to Deshaun Jackson. And as an Eagles fan, I know an awful lot about Deshaun Jackson and what he brought to an offense.
So Xavier Worthy's fascinating. I don't think he's an X at the NFL. I think he's a Z, and I think he's an inside receiver. I kind of think of just my comp is I think more of Devonta Smith. I think there's some similarities. Devonta Smith's probably a better route runner overall, but Xavier Worthy could make up with it with his just blazing speed. And I think that's where the Deshaun Jackson comp comes in. Now, from a fantasy perspective, and then I'll talk about his skill set. Fantasy perspective, I almost do think he's going to be like Deshaun Jackson. You'll have You're going to have 3 for 90 with a touchdown, because he's going to get like the 65-yard touchdown where the coverage is so bad, a safety blows it, something happens, they scheme him open. he just beats someone so deep. Boom, there it is, right? But then there's going to be good press coverage corners. Or good, we know there's a few good slot corners, like Ladarius Sneed. Isn't that the young man that went from the Chiefs, right? They lost the corner, right? Yep. Sneed, if you have a player like Sneed, you could just lock up Xavier Worthy. He's physical, he's big, he's fast, he's a coverage corner.
Yeah.
I think if Xavier Worthy gets trapped by really good press coverage corners early, he could be slowed down. It's going to be hard, but he could be slowed down. Now, how do you get that? You put him in motion, you scheme him out, you try to hide him, right? So we do need a little bit of an offensive scheme that's going to use his speed and get him in position where he's off press coverage, right? That's why I don't think he can be an X. Because if you put him out there on the X and he lines up on the line of scrimmage, you literally just take your best press coverage guy and you just say, knock him on the ground. I mean, he's 165. I mean, I'm sorry. You just literally stare him in the eye. Who was the corner? Richard Sherman, right? Yep. You would just literally put Richard Sherman on him and he would just body him up and it's done. He's just not getting off. So that's why he's got to be in the Z. He's got to be off the line of scrimmage or in motion, in my book. He has good hands, but not great. I can't count how many times he dropped big balls. I mean, big balls. Watch the tape, man. He can get frustrating. And I've said this before. There's no better way to lose the confidence of your pro quarterback than to drop a bunch of balls. We know, because there's a psychological aspect to football, and you know that if you're a quarterback and you're 39, you're going to throw that ball to like Odell Beckham. Remember Eli Manning? When he got in big trouble late in his career, literally, what did he do? Hey, where's Odell? Like, just
up there somewhere.
He's somewhere's down there. Let me get the ball to him, right? Joe Burrow does it at times to chase, forcing the ball in, right? We've seen it.
Yeah.
Well, why do they do that? They know their playmaker's going to catch the ball. If Xavier Worthy doesn't improve those hands, he's going to lose confidence of his quarterbacks. I have him number 6. His speed will make him a first-round player, first-round draft pick. I think his ceiling, we're hoping for massive efficiency, right? 60 catches, 900 yards, 8 or 9 touchdowns. There will be a value on banking on efficiency, but that's why I put him at number 6. Because there are some the press coverage concerns me, the size concerns me, and the hands are great. The speed, the breakout. He broke out as a true freshman at Texas. That's very impressive. There's no question about that. He's been very productive for 3 years. That's incredible. But I can't put him in the upper echelon just based on a 40 time. Now, I do think he's a great. His twitch ability and to get off the line of scrimmage again open when it's not press coverage, it's silly. It's silly.
Nah, I like a lot of the points you brought up there because we're all so quick to remember the bad with John Ross and some other comparisons we've seen from him, even Jamison Williams to a point where we're hoping to get more from him. But let's not forget that we've seen really good guys at that speed, and we just need to have a coach who's going to use them properly. Moving on, Brian Thomas and Adonai Mitchell, AD Mitchell, seem to be of similar builds and traits. What would you say the biggest difference between those two in your eyes is?
Brian Thomas is good, and Adonai Mitchell is not. That's
all right, hold on.
It's so funny because I wrote this question before I saw your rankings because they really are. Like when you put the stats and the measurables and everything, it's like looking in a mirror. But like you actually see the tape and they are very different. And then when I see your rankings, I'm like, okay, this question is going to be so funny.
All right, so I want to throw out here, I was going to save this for later, but our buddy Jay brings up, he can't get on board with having Brian Thomas that high. Not as high as you have him. You have him at 4, like a lot of people do, basically saying he did so little in his first 2 years and then had that amazing last year. So you said, Thomas is good, Mitchell is not. Let's get into that.
All right, I'll tell you what I like about Thomas. I don't care he ran 3 routes. He might run the 3 routes better than anyone else in the draft class. He is just, He is incredible second level deep. And there will be NFL value. We've all watched enough NFL film. If you don't have the vertical threat to take the top off the defense, it changes your entire offensive structure and what you can and cannot do. Same thing, paradox. If you don't have a quarterback who pulls the trigger deep, aka Derek Carr, you have the same problem as far as putting a lot of points on the board. So Thomas is this incredible projection. And I understand that, of course, I want everyone in my model to have 2 years and back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons up like Malik Nabers and like Marvin Harrison. That's the perfect scenario. It's not the world we live in all the time.
Yeah.
So you have to say to yourself, what can Brian Thomas be? He has a basketball background. He came onto the LSU campus and they were like, hey, do you want to play football? He came on. When you smash in the SEC, I'm sorry. That's just impressive. The numbers are silly from last year. 78% catch rate? Are you kidding me? That is off the charts, just as an example. And I know Marvin Harrison had a bad quarterback, but you're looking at about 65%. Nabers, 69%. Odunze, 66%. Thomas is 78%. He sheared wide receiver duties with Malik Nabers, and he had a 27% market share of the team passing yards. Oh, that is simply unbelievable for that receiver. My favorites, not my only stat, but one of my favorite. Let's just leave it at that. Receiving yards per team pass attempt, pretty sticky. I'm looking for a 2.50 benchmark. Brian Thomas has 2.95. He with a teammate who had 4.20.
Good Lord.
So you are talking the idea that he has that high with a teammate that puts in an all-time great number is really silly, folks. His ADOT, 13.7. They weren't throwing dump passes to him. And we know the value. There's a statistical value to getting the ball thrown deep to you, right? Yeah. And then there's also value. That means the coach and the quarterback trust you vertically. They don't trust every player vertically. But when you have a large ADOT, the quarterback and the coach believe in you. That does produce bigger fantasy numbers. It's a correlation there, right? We know the more they throw the ball to you deep, the more likely you score, the more likely that you get big chunk plays, right? 3 catches, 75 yards. We love that on a bad day, right? Brian Thomas, when he grows into the experience, I don't think he's going to bust out year one. I think he needs a year to get to the NFL game. But let me ask you this, gentlemen. If he ends up in Buffalo or Kansas City, he might be the third wide receiver off the board if Odunze's in New England.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you put him with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, holy. And you know what? You got 2 routes, son. You got the curl and the post. And you just run those 2. And if you see Patrick or Josh break down and run out of the pocket, son, just go deeper.
Yeah.
Just go deep. Because we know if you get behind anyone one-on-one, Mr. Allen and Mr. Holmes will get the ball to you deep. You have to kind of project. Now, is there a floor? Oh, absolutely. He could be a total bust at that size and that inexperience. I get it. There's risk. But I'm grading him on ceiling, and I'm hoping that he ends up in the right system. Now, you started this conversation. That's why Brian Thomas is good in my book. Let's go back to the other guy, Adonai Mitchell. I watched way too much Texas football. Last 2 years, or 2 of the last 3 years with Bijan, Quinn Ewers, all the players they had. Then this year I watched a ton. I wanted to watch Quinn Ewers. I wanted to watch Xavier Worthy. Ended up watching a lot of Jonathan Brooks, Jatavian Sanders. Have you noticed a trend yet?
Okay, you're not mentioning Adonai Mitchell.
You're skipping a name.
I never once. And this can be subjective, but I never once left the Texas game saying, oh, Donnie Mitchell's the best. He had a great game.
Maybe you just forgot his jersey number. I mean, that's
but I never said like, oh, you know how Texas is going to win the game? Get the ball into Donnie Mitchell's hands more. Never once said that. Then I plugged him in my model. And the model illuminates. It does not guarantee nothing, but it illuminates. I mentioned receiving yards per team pass attempt. My benchmark is 2.5. Adonai Mitchell is 1.78.
Gross.
That's pathetic.
Yeah.
That's really bad, folks. His team aerial dominator, 21%. He doesn't come close to the 30% benchmark. His catch percentage, 60%. Here's what bothers me too. He had a grade, and again, we can disagree with grades, but I think when you look at a model, you want a lot of different data points. He basically earned a C- from PFF. There's just too many red flags here with Adonai Mitchell. I think everyone's looking at this upside. I think the chance of him hitting a ceiling is about 5%.
Yeah.
There is. He could. And I will say this, I'm willing to, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But when my model has that many red flags in it, he's not going to be in the top 12. And when my film study has some questions, I didn't think he was a great route runner. I didn't think he has great hands. I think he just got open deep a bunch of times and scored some touchdowns. I mean, he was on explosive offense and he had advantages. They were covering Jatavian Sanders or Xavier Worthy or Jonathan Brooks, right? Like, he's the last guy you were covering on the Longhorns if you're a defensive coordinator. So I don't get it. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but the price he's going at, I'm not going to have any of Adonai Mitchell, and I'm okay with that.
Let's end this segment with someone you're a little bit more positive on because you have him coming in right behind Thomas in your rankings. Troy Franklin kind of fits the same traits, but he's 30 pounds lighter than these guys. Give us a quick 30-second elevator pitch, and I know asking you to go 30 seconds is impossible, but give us a quick pitch on Troy Franklin.
I'll take that as a compliment, my friend. I think Troy Franklin is the best second-level separator in this class. I said this with Garrett Wilson years ago when I watched him at Ohio State. When Troy Franklin gets 15 yards downfield and when he gets to put a move on a secondary member or a safety, forget about it. He's gone. There are literally highlights where there's no one in the film. Garrett Wilson had the same thing. People were saying, well, is Garrett Wilson or is it the scheme? Well, it's both. Ohio State schemed them open, but you know what? Garrett Wilson took advantage of it. When he had an opportunity to beat a player deep at the second level, Garrett Wilson destroyed the guy. Ankle breaker. He was an ankle breaker. Troy Franklin's an ankle breaker. He destroys people downfield. He has a much more diverse route tree than you think. Because we like to highlight the quick screens and the long bombs, he runs almost every route for Oregon this year. Don't get fooled by the numbers. And when I plugged in my model, gentlemen, I was like, whoa, he's even better than I thought. Receiving yards per team pass attempt, 2.93. Yum, yum. Team aerial dominator, 31%. Yum, yum. Catch percentage, 70%. Oh, my God, I love that. Yards per route run, 15.5. He ends up with an ADOT of 12.9. And that could be higher, but Oregon throws a lot of those quick screens. If you watch the Ducks, they're dumping that ball, boom, boom, boom. So he's getting a lot of 1 or 2 yard receptions, right? Which pulls your ADOT down. So he has this 12.9. I bet you if we took out the screens, I bet you his ADOT is kind of silly.
Yeah.
He was the playmaker in the Ducks offense. He ran a 4.41. He was sick. I tend to believe the article, the rumors that he was sick at the combine. Because I'll say this. He ran faster than the 4.41 on tape. There's no question in my mind. He might be football speed. I mean, there is football speed. I mean, you can't, when you watch great players, they're faster in their uniforms than they are in the 40.
Yeah.
I think Troy Franklin is the best value. I've done 8 mock drafts now. I've got him in like 6 of them at the top of the second round. If you need a quarterback and you start, let's say you start with Jaden Daniels, you get Troy Franklin, that is a smash in round 2. And then you just pound the running backs if that's what you need. Like, I'm all in. The chips are in the table. I don't know, and I'm not saying the film's perfect. I understand that the scheme. But man, I really do like him on film too. I think he's much tougher than people give him credit for. And his feet on the boundary are sick. He has great toe tapping feet on the boundary. He's got these real long, lengthy arms. So he's 6'2", but he kind of jumps like he's 6'6", 6'7", because he's got these real long arms. I'm all in on Troy Franklin.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, Josh.
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, I feel like there's definitely like a helmet scouting kind of stigma when it comes to Oregon with skill position players. So maybe that's kind of where the quote unquote hate for Troy Franklin comes from. But, switching gears to somebody that people like absolutely love, Ladd McConkey has like blown up this draft cycle. And I'm kind of curious, like I get the measurables, the speed is there, quick twitch, like it does the routes and all the drills really, really well. That production profile is cheeks. Like it is bad. So let's kind of talk about like how his game can kind of translate to the next level. Can he be like a serviceable fantasy asset? I mean, you have him in your top 10 heading into the draft. So I feel like there's something to talk about here.
No, I think I'm a little lower. There's some people have him in the top 5. I've heard someone.
Yes, you are true.
And Joshua, you're right. His production profile to me is not worthy of a top 5 fantasy player. Here's a couple numbers that worry me. Receiving yards per team pass attempt, 1.55. That's not good. And he had the matchup advantage because teams worried about Brock Bowers. So he should have been better on that. His speed is good, 4.39. The 20-yard 3-cone is real nice. He never dominated a team. He had 17% team aerial dominator. I believe he never had a 1,000-yard season 2 years ago.
I think the most he had was like 769 or something.
Yes. His receiving yards, or his yards per reception is 14.2. My benchmark is 15, so he doesn't hit that. He's the high school class of 2020. So that means he's been around for a long time. It's only 119 receptions. You don't really have an early breakout age, right?
No, certainly not.
No. So he's one of the older players.
I think you can argue he doesn't even have an old breakout age.
That's a whole nother. You're right. He hasn't stayed healthy. So I think people are just waxing poetically about he does make some great plays. I get it. But when you have to look at this nuts and bolts, top to bottom, everything in the model, and there are red flags that said at the current dynasty price, and I see him going off in the first round in almost all my mock drafts, real early. I'm not going to have any Ladd McConkey. I'm just not. I'm not paying like number 10 overall pick for a guy who's never played 13 games, or he might have played 14 in the playoffs that one year. I have no confidence that he can play 17 games. Now, let's look at the good note. He's clearly athletic. He is tough as nails on the inside, but he doesn't stay on the field. He's going to take
he's not that tough.
Well, I mean, but he's going to take some hits. He's going to take hits. I mean, he's not afraid of mixing it up. And we've all seen receivers who don't like to go in the middle of the field. I think he's a slot receiver.
Oh, 100%.
And that, to me, limits his ceiling. So why, like, let's just say I like Brian Thomas more than Ladd McConkey. We've discussed it. Because the ceiling for Brian Thomas is so
100%.
much higher. I don't see how, I mean, just me. It's just my grade, my study, my years of looking at this. how can you have Ladd McConkey over Brian Thomas? And there's people who do. I just don't see it. I mean, Brian Thomas could change your whole wide receiver locker room, the whole depth chart, everything. Ladd McConkey's a piece.
Yeah.
Like you want him with, like maybe in Philadelphia, right? Would he be nice with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith? Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
But do I want him to be my starting alpha wide receiver? I mean, he ain't going to make it.
People have these daydreams of Wes Welker and Julian Edelman, and that, as we've brought up a lot of time on this show, and I think the best point we could take from this show is yesterday's NFL isn't today's NFL, and that's not the cards in Ladd McConkey's future. So
no, and let's be very specific here. When you talk about Edelman and you talk about Wes Welker,
yeah,
it's Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and Josh McDaniel.
Yep,
they had tight ends that could dominate safeties, and then they had wide pass catching running backs. Those two players were idealistically perfect, stylistically perfect for that Patriots passing game with Tom Brady. That does not happen. I mean, Jarvis Landry would have succeeded in that Patriots scheme too, because he was the same instant burst, instant separation, middle of the field. He would have caught 120 passes in New England. He just wasn't in that system on that team. But that system, that scheme, that coaching staff with that quarterback was perfect for those two gentlemen.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
What if Ladd ends up in Buffalo or Kansas City? Does that change your opinion on, being a piece, or can he be somebody that gets elevated because of the quarterback play?
I don't picture him ever being a 140 target receiver.
Yeah.
Could he get 100 targets if he's healthy? Yes. Now, obviously, landing spot, he would move up. I'm willing to concede that Ladd McConkey, in that scenario, I would have to consider moving him up 1 or 2 spots, and depending on where other players land. I'm not going to put him in the top 3 in that scenario.
Okay. Yeah, you're paying the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes tax at that point.
That's
right?
what you're paying.
No, I can respect that. So another guy that I think kind of had some production concerns, similar to Odunze, Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. I've seen some people comp him to DK Metcalf. I don't know if I love that comp, but you know what? If he turns into DK Metcalf, I'm all for it, because I do kind of like his game a little bit. And we'll get to landing spots a little bit later. But what do you think this? I mean, let's be real. Like, he's not in your top 10. Do you think this kid can ball, or is it just because he doesn't hit your top 10 because this class is just that deep?
The class is that deep. I have him at number 12, and okay, I do like him. I was hoping to get him at a value. I love him late second round, early third round in dynasty drafts. I don't know what his current ADP is. I have seen him go off a little bit earlier. I'm not willing to pay early second round with so many good running backs on the board. There might be a tight end. I don't think he's DK Metcalf. Yeah. DK Metcalf was special at Mississippi. I mean, he was just unbelievable down there. Even though numbers don't show it, you have to see the flickers of his greatness to understand him. It's a little smaller. I think DK Metcalf 6'3" or 6'4", right? So we got Legette 6'1". I was hoping that the late breakout would scare more people off of Legette, but it doesn't seem to be. There are some people, and that's probably why I have him a little lower, because my model this last year, he was silly, folks. My model thinks he's incredibly. I mean, he's incredible this year.
Yeah.
Receiving yards per team pass attempt 3.05. Team aerial dominator, 38%. Catch percentage, 73%. Everything, ADOT, 13.8. He was great. Great. Now, what's going to be interesting with Legette? He's a special teams wizard. There are teams right now that have blown off kick returns and punt returns for the last 2 years. Look at some of the depth charts, folks, of teams with returners on them.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad out there.
And the return game is about to change greatly.
Yes. So I'm telling you right now, there are teams who are in desperate need of a kick and punt returner. Right? What was it last year? 1.1 kickoff return per game. Why spend anything on a kick returner?
Yep.
Now, with the new rules,
where it's almost forced.
and they're going to project it at 4.5 kick returns a game. Well, if you get a great kick returner, that is 51. That is 68 returns. That's a lot of hidden yardage now, folks. Yeah. Then you give your player 25, 35, 40 punt returns. Now you're saying to yourself, oh, that's almost 100 touches. We can't have players who can't do that. Why do I bring this up? Xavier Legette's going to be pushed up boards because there's going to be a team in the second round that desperately needs that special team contributor. He's going to contribute day one on special teams. Why do I like that? That means he's on the field. And that means he probably has opportunity in 3 wide receiver, definitely in 4 wide receiver formations. And that's a lot of touches.
Do you think that takes him out of the rookie year one type of breakout where maybe he grows in year 2 and 3 kind of thing?
Yes. He's going to, because he's got so much value as an all-purpose player. I mean, I'm dead serious. Look at some of the teams with their kick returners right now in the depth charts.
Yeah.
They're bad. And if I'm a playoff team, I could probably pick a guy like Xavier Legette because I'm not desperate at the position, right?
Yeah.
So I could take him and just allow him to get his all-purpose yards. I think he's better than Cordero Patterson, but I think there's some similarities there. And if I get him in the 3rd round, I think it's a home run. I love him in dynasty drafts.
In our latest mock, this past Saturday, Superflex mock, he went 36th overall, middle of the 3rd round. So
perfect.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, because he's going to get the ball. And it depends, but most dynasty leagues, if you score a touchdown on a special teams, you usually get that. You don't get the yards, but you do get the touchdown. So he might get 2 touchdowns on special teams next year. So yeah, I do like Legette, but late breakout matters. I'm sorry. The numbers aren't pretty for the late breakout, right? You start looking at these guys who played 4 or 5 years, and it doesn't get very pretty. But the other parts of the model, I am absolutely in love with them.
Anybody who's watched this show for any period of time, as Josh already alluded, knows I'm a heightist, and then I just love tall wide receivers. Which brings me, Jay brings up, I love tall wide receivers that can't catch, which brings me to Keon Coleman. Is Keon Coleman, I saw this comp and it broke my heart. Is he doomed, and this is a little helmet scouting, is he doomed to just be Kelvin Benjamin just 2.0? Is he just a red zone guy? And if he is there going to be value in that role? And then Wigwam brings up his teammate. Is there any hope for Johnny Wilson? So these Florida State wide receivers, should we be worried?
Very worried. Very worried. Right now, I have not drafted Keon Coleman in any dynasty drafts. I'm not a Keon Coleman guy. I really think he's like the gold nugget in the riverbed, where you got it your first day in 1849 when you went out to San Francisco and you thought you were going to be rich. And for the next 4 months, you never found a gold nugget again. He's the shiny gold nugget, but man, there's a lot of dirt and a lot of sediment standing around him.
So you're saying he's going to be a 49er. That's what I took from this.
He's got a 56% catch rate. I'm sorry, man. That's really bad. Receiving yards per team pass attempt is 1.62. Oh my God, that's really, 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 really bad. That's below Adonai Mitchell. 4.61. And I get there is highlights on the film, and I understand where they love the athleticism, but I question a little bit with that 40 time. And then they refer to the game against LSU. my friends, that game is fool's gold. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. Little did we know the opening week of the college football season, we did not know that LSU was a dumpster diver on defense. That was the worst LSU defense that I've seen in my 40 years of watching college football. They were absolutely atrocious. Look at the numbers. LSU was so bad on defense. Why do I bring that up? 25% of Keon Coleman's production last year was against arguably a bottom 10 pass defense in the nation. That's bad, folks. He was on an undefeated team. And he looked like that. I'll have no Keon Coleman. Now, he will have a Xavier Legette value. You can plug and play him day one on special teams. And some NFL team will draft him specifically for that.
There you go.
Worry about the pass catching utility, as Joshua mentioned. Maybe he's a year 2 or 3 playmaker on offense. But we are so desperate for returns right now. We've got to put Keon Coleman back there because I think he scored like 3 or 4 return punts kicks over his college career. And you do see the electricness in space. But as far as a route runner and pass catcher, I don't know what's going on. I have him at number 9 or number 8, and it's a week 8. But the other
I was about
guys,
to say, it feels like you could be talked off of that very easily.
Oh, I'll tell you right now, Joshua, I won't have any of him. But the problem is the guy. So here's where, can I put Ladd McConkey ahead of him? I don't see the ceiling. Can I put Roman Wilson ahead of him? I can't see. You see, there is a ceiling for Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
And that's why I said if he hits his ceiling and everything comes. But I don't think I'll pay the freight, if that makes sense.
Well, and it's not out there right now. I'm a guy who was very high on Keon Coleman because I did the measurable scouting. And so I originally had him as like my wide receiver 4. He has also fallen to my 8. I was glad you said he's your 8. And I do have McConkey ahead of him just because PPR is like the general in my brain.
Oh, yeah.
And so And so that's where I have McConkey ahead of him. But Gator Jay will be happy to know he has also fallen down my rankings in all of this because Jay was worried about me and my love for Keon Coleman. John, before we move on, I want to be respectful of your time. We usually end the show at about an hour. We do tend to run over. We had a couple more questions and we were going to talk landing spots. Do you have any hard outs? Like, I just want to be respectful.
No, not a hard out. Let's go for 15. That's cool.
Okay, perfect. Let's just quickly talk. You brought his name up already, Roman Wilson. And there's been a lot of talk about Michigan not throwing the ball because they didn't need to throw the ball and how that kind of hurt J.J. McCarthy. Well, Roman Wilson is in that exact same boat. Have you seen enough of him to evaluate a floor and ceiling, or is this guy going to be a project in the NFL?
I think he has a very high floor with a minimal ceiling. I think you're looking at a player in the right offense. 65 receptions, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, which is a flex starter, right? If you have bye weeks and injuries, he can play for you. My model likes him. There's 73% catch rate. That's very impressive. For a player who projects as a slot receiver, and I think he'll play slot, that inside / slot, he averaged 16 yards per reception. That's pretty incredible on a low. I wouldn't say they're sophisticated passing game. How about that? Let's just leave it at that at Michigan. So when I see this yards per reception at 16, and this is what really, I thought this was on film, but I wasn't sure. His ADOT is 14.8. Michigan threw him the ball deep.
Yeah.
And that's one of the and when JJ was looking for a big play, it went to Roman Wilson. And I know, look, at being clutch can be subjective, but I watched enough Derek Jeter to know someone clutch and enough enough A-Rod to know when they're not clutch. All right. Like and Roman Wilson came up big in big spots. He's 186. I didn't think he was that big. He's bigger than you think. I did not expect him to be 186. He also ran a 4.39. That's pretty impressive. He can beat you vertically from inside. I do think a team will use his quickness, his acceleration, his burst, gets right off the line of scrimmage and gives a target to a quarterback. Yet, he can beat you vertically if your safeties are cheating. I really he would be perfect with the CD Lamb in Dallas or Michael Gallup who plays on the outside. You put Ferguson and Roman Wilson on the inside for Dak and 4 receiver formations. That's kind of what they need. Because you got to deal with CD Lamb, right? You got Gallup, who's your Z receiver. Well, put Roman in the middle there. So I think he is going to be landing spot dependent. I do not believe he is the alpha. Even Pittsburgh. I keep wondering, who's Pittsburgh going to take in the second round? I think Ricky Pearsall or Roman Wilson is the type of guy Pittsburgh might like because they do have more of your classic X with George Pickens, right? You have your big outside. What do they need? They got Pat Freiermuth. So what do you need? You need a guy who can get open quick and play the Z or inside, and I think that's those types of players. Or Ladd. Ladd might look good in Pittsburgh too.
Just keep it all Georgia wide receivers there.
Nothing really wrong with that. All right, so we have the section favorite mid late round sleepers. You put somebody in your top 10 that I feel like a lot of people would kind of consider a mid to late round sleeper, and that's Javon Baker. I've seen a lot of hype kind of going around Twitter on this guy. He's kind of does a little bit of everything. So tell us why you like Javon Baker.
I have a number 7. I'm buying him in every third round I can. I think he's the best. I think he's the best value. He's an outside boundary receiver. He's not as dominant clearly as Odunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think his ceiling is maybe as high as Brian Thomas, but it's really close. I'll say this. Excuse me. When I put him in my model in December, I was blown away, gentlemen. It's not like Javon Baker was someone I was like, oh, yeah, he's a no-brainer. But here's what happened. I put him in my model. First, receiving yards per team pass attempt, 3.11. I think I lost a year of my life when my heart stopped. It's like, how the hell did Javon Baker get a 3.11? Like, that is, seriously, that is bright, flashing lights. That's what that means. Like, my benchmark is 2.5. He's 3.11. You're over 3. Bright lights are going off. Just to give you an example, Marvin Harrison Jr. is 3.22. Rome Odunze is 2.86. Brian Thomas is 2.95. Javon Baker's 3.11. Okay, now I'm thinking.
Now you got to pay attention.
Yes. Then I put in.
Dive back into the tape then.
Well, then I put in the rest. I always like receiving yards. I do that first. It takes the longest time to calculate it because you have to get spreadsheets and all that. Then I was receiving yards per reception, 17.5. How did he do that? I was like, did I miss something in his career? And here's what the magic was. The magic elixir of analytics. His ADOT was 17.1. 17.1.
Good Lord.
Good Lord. My benchmark is 12. Malik Nabers, 12.2. Marvin Harrison, 13.1. Rome Odunze, 15.5. Javon Baker, 17.1. That's the trifecta. ADOT, yards per reception, receiving yards per team. Oh, my God. So you know what I did? I said, I got to watch more film. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Like, I watched UCF. I'm not saying I watched them as much as Ohio State and, LSU. And I went back in the film, gentlemen. I said, I'm going to grind him. It was winter vacation. I'm a teacher. I watched 6 games. I'm like, I'm all in.
Wow.
He's mean. He's nasty. He's got the Zay Flowers attitude. If you're his teammate, you love him. If you're his opponent, you hate him.
There you go.
He talks smack. He's aggressive. He might get you a couple penalties a year if he smashes the ball on the ground, after he makes a big play. He's got really.
You tell me he's the new Steve Smith. I'm in love.
Chad Johnson, Steve Smith, Terrell Owens, Zay Flowers, right? Just that kind of. They all have the personality which made them better, right? They were all great players, but then you put that sprinkle of attitude on top, and they became awesome players.
There you go.
And I just see a outside receiver who can beat you deep on a regular basis. He's not a separation king. That's why I have him at number 7. I'll tell you this. If he was a second-level separator, I might have him at number 4. But he doesn't get a ton of separation. But what he will do, he'll just beat the snot out of you. I'm just going to get that ball. I'm just going to get the ball. I don't care who you are. He contorts his body. And I really think his eyes, hands, and feet are in perfect synchronicity. He understands where he is on the field. He knows how, you ever see a receiver go up and mistime the leap where the ball goes over them or they over jump or something? He hits it at the apex, sky high catching it and just grabs it. And then, let me just say, John Reese Plumlee isn't good throwing the football, folks. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to hurt. The man has a family in the future. There are plays where Javon Baker is horizontal to the ground. Literally jumping horizontal like Superman flying in the sky, has to put his hands out as far as he can, and he catches the goddamn ball.
There you go.
George Pickens all over again.
I mean, yeah, and he's got a better model than George Pickens. I mean, to be honest, he's the best value right now in Dynasty.
There you go. Best value in Dynasty. All right, we're going to lightning round these landing spots. I'll list off me and Josh's landing spots, and then John, tell us where you think they're going to land. I want to get you out of here at 1:15, John. I'm just warning you right now. So, all right, an hour and 15, I mean to say. Marvin Harrison Jr., I got him going to Arizona. Josh has the Patriots taking him. Where do you think he ends up?
Arizona will take him, but the Patriots would be smart if they pass the quarterback and take him, but they won't.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. That's exactly my thought process there. Malik Nabers, I think the Chargers take him. I don't think they're happy with their current wide receiver room. Josh has them going to the Jets.
No, I think the Chargers pass on, doesn't make Harbaugh. I've watched too much Harbaugh.
That's
not
fair.
His style. I think he's going to end up a Giant, unfortunately, but that's where I think Nabers ends up.
So I have Odunze and the Giants, which was I was debating those two. I didn't know where to put them. So I have Odunze and the Giants. Josh actually has him going to the Cardinals.
I have interesting. People think the Cardinals might like him, but man, that would be ballsy. I'm all for it though.
Well, I think ultimately they end up trading back and they get Odunze that way.
They could do that, yes. I right now have them going to the Bears. But that's my fantasy goggles, my drunk fantasy.
I was going to say, we actually have the fantasy goggles question last year. Brian Thomas, I have the Jets, Josh have the Bills. So we both have them in the AFC East. What do you got?
I got the Bills. I think the Bills are salivating for that type of player.
I don't think my next one here, I don't think he fits what they want, but I just think it makes so much sense with what they have. Xavier Worthy. I have the Steelers taking him just so they have speed to go with George Pickens' size. Josh has him going to the Dolphins, so there's speed.
They're going to bypass the offensive line and go straight for we're just going to kill you with speed. That's I'm telling you. Xavier Worthy in Miami, make it happen.
Josh, wow, I have him going to Dallas because I don't think Jerry Jones could. But you've just we do know Josh McDaniels cannot help himself with speed.
Mike McDaniel.
And he does return punts and kicks.
Ooh.
So you could sit him in Miami behind Waddle and Hill for a year or two and go 3 receivers. I mean, think about it. Oh, my God. Hill, Worthy, Waddle, and Devon Achane on the field at the same time.
Deadly. You don't need an offensive line at that point.
You don't. He does fit. I never thought of it. He does fit the Josh McDaniel model of speed. I agree, but I do think Dallas. That's just what I think. Right now, I might have to rethink that.
All right, and then you called it the fantasy goggles. My ideal landing spot, I want Ladd McConkey to Atlanta. He stays in Georgia. I think he's a great slot wide receiver in between London and Mooney. Josh wants Xavier Legette to the Panthers. What is your ideal landing spot, I guess, outside now of Odunze to the Bears, unless it's Odunze to the Bears?
Oh, my favorite is Troy Franklin to Buffalo.
Oh, there you go.
I want Troy Franklin so bad with Josh Allen. Like that is just with Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakur and then you just put Franklin out there with them.
There you go. John, do me a favor. Remind everybody where they can find your work. Remind everybody what you're working on right now. And then end this with you giving us your sleeper for next year's 2025 wide receiver room.
All right. So it's John Laub, Gridiron Skull 91. I couldn't afford the A and the R when I signed up in 2014. So it's Gridiron Skull 91. And then what I find my written profiles are all up on PlayerProfiler.com. Just hit the fantasy section and the articles will pop up on there. All my video work is on YouTube at the Rookie Big Board channel. Check that out. Right now we have 28 players for you to see. I think everyone we named tonight know we have our sleeper wide receiver. So some of them might be out this week.
There you go. Some new names to go watch. So.
Yes, we're recording our final show right now at the sleeper. Now, wide receiver. Let me see. You got me, but I love this. So this is going to be hard for me only because I don't know if I'm too knee deep in college because I don't know if people know this name, but I this is the guy you're going to hear, I believe, a lot about. Tatoria McMillan, Arizona. Okay. 6'4", 220.
I love him.
Immediate. he was immediate breakout as a freshman. Sophomore year, he had over 1,200 yards. Here's why it's so, not only does he have the size and the speed, he plays with this high school quarterback in a great prolific passing offense. You're going to hear a lot about Tatoria McMillan, Arizona Wildcats. Love him.
Love it.
But I don't know if that's a sleeper, but I don't think most people know that yet.
Josh and I don't know who he is. So
okay. Yeah, hey. I think Josh is looking him up now.
Yeah, I'm literally I'm typing it in the show sheet. I'm like, Tatoria, and I'm like, did I spell this right? I have no idea.
And Jay knows what's up. He said Ryan heard 6'4". That was all I needed.
That's all I need.
All right, guys. I'm not going to do a big, long-winded intro. Thank you to John. Follow Club Fantasy on YouTube. We'd very much appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. We will be back next week with our
shows.
I'd say all the live shows you could ever want. We'll be back next week doing this exact show with tight ends, and I guarantee it's not running an hour and 17 minutes. Thanks to John. Follow Club Fantasy. Everyone have a great night. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We'll see you at the next show.